decides it's not going to work. I'll be right back. I'm going to go down and see if we can get somebody to kind of figure out why this is going.
Oh my God, that. That's atrocious. Yeah, please put your hand on.
I feel like I'm really trying to get
It looks like you're doing
sources to see if that would affect it. It's not.
You don't always want to have about okay, just text me when you shoot. Yeah, there's no place that way. Okay, just like there's no place that way.
There we go. I appreciate it. Okay, so what happens on the sheep common in New York City and other places in these New England towns that provided for a common? Do you guess? How many of you grew up on a farm? What'd you raise?
Cattle, goats, horses.
Cattle, goats, horses. What happens if you put goats in a small confined area, if you put enough goats in that area?
Nothing good.
They'll drive on it.
Yeah.
They'll rip every, I mean, it will rapidly become just a barren patch of ground, because goats in particular are very, very damaging. They pull up the grass by the root. Cattle will do the same thing. Horses will do the same thing if you put them in a small enough area and you don't have any grazing pasture. In New Mexico, it takes something like 500 acres per cow-calf unit to graze animals if you don't want to feed, if you want to just let them out there and roam, because it's a desert-type climate. So the tragedy of the bunnies, who wants to play the bunny game for me? Who wants to demonstrate the bunny? Okay, you get to play the bunny game. So come up here and you get to play the game. Isn't this cute? So you're a bunny merchant. You gotta try and grab the bunnies. Look at you, you little selfish person. You got 17. Wow, you got all the bunnies. Beat your opponents. Round 2. There are no more bunnies. You can't make future bunnies without current bunnies. This is the tragedy of the bunnies. Play version 2. So now the bunnies are no longer public goods. You can't click on other people's bunnies. In order to have bunnies in the second round, you have to keep some bunnies in the first round. So go ahead and play. That's your user, down right there. You can take some bunnies, but if you take them all, bunnies multiply. In the second round, whatever you have left, you'll have twice or 3 times the number. I can't remember. Play round 2. Look at how many bunnies you have. Now, if you had the third round, you'd have even more bunnies, right? Because bunnies love to multiply. Thank you for playing the game, demonstrating the tragedy of the bunnies. What this highlights is what happens with things like air and water. If we have these things that we can't control, we can't sell them, we can't charge people for clean air, we become susceptible to pollution and acid rain and things like that from industrialization. Well, the problem was, would you hold the great industrialists like Henry Ford responsible for the actions that they created in terms of the Industrial Revolution and the pollution, when nobody understood what the effects of pollution would be. I don't think you would. You wouldn't say Henry Ford was a bad man because he created the automobile, which has created all of these problems with greenhouse gases that we now have, because that was not something that was even scientifically acknowledged at the time that Ford created the automobile. So what you have to do is you have to come up with these rules that will, in the aggregate, produce the most amount of good. So we have things like the Environmental Protection Agency that come about to serve the good of the whole in protecting these scarce resources so that they don't become overutilized. Now, the problem with that can be that can the law keep up? And so some of you have had my class before and you've seen this video, and I apologize for those of you who have seen it, but it's worthy of thinking about this video in this class with regard to rule utilitarian or even act utilitarianism in terms of can we actually provide rules that will, even in the aggregate, produce the most amount of good.
I would like to tell you a story connecting the notorious privacy incident involving Adam and Eve and the remarkable shift in the boundaries between public and private, which has occurred in the past 10 years. You know the incident. Adam and Eve, one day in the Garden of Eden, realize they are naked, they freak out, and the rest is history. Nowadays, Adam and Eve would probably act differently. We do reveal so much more information about ourselves online than ever before. And so much information about us is being collected by organizations. Now, there is much to gain and benefit from this massive analysis of personal information or big data. But there are also complex trade-offs that come from giving away our privacy. And my story is about these trade-offs. I will start with an observation, which in my mind has become clearer and clearer in the past few years, that any personal information can become sensitive information. Back in the year 2000, about 100 billion photos were shot worldwide, but only a minuscule proportion of them were actually uploaded online. In 2010, only on Facebook, in a single month, 2.5 billion photos were uploaded, most of them identified. In the same span of time, computers' ability to recognize people in photos improved by 3 orders of magnitude. What happens when you combine these technologies together? Increasing availability of facial data, improving facial recognizing ability by computers, but also cloud computing, which gives anyone in this theater the kind of computational power which a few years ago was only the domain of 3-letter agencies. And ubiquitous computing, which allows my phone, which is not a supercomputer, to connect to the internet and do there hundreds of thousands of face matches in a few seconds. Well, we conjecture the result of this combination of technologies will be a radical change in our very notions of privacy and anonymity. To test that, we did an experiment on Carnegie Mellon University campus. We asked students who were walking by to participate in a study. And we took a shot with a webcam, and we asked them to fill out a survey on a laptop. While they were filling out the survey, we uploaded their shot to a cloud computing cluster. And we started using a facial recognizer to match that shot to a database of some hundreds of thousands of images which we had downloaded from Facebook profiles. By the time the subject reached the last page on the survey, the page had been dynamically updated with the 10 best matching photos which the recognizer had found. And we asked the subjects to indicate whether he or she found themselves in the photo. You see the subject? Well, the computer did, and in fact did so for 1 out of 3 subjects. So essentially, we can start from an anonymous face, offline or online, and we can use facial recognition to give a name to that anonymous face, thanks to social media data. But a few years back, we did something else. We started from social media data, we combined it statistically with data from US government social security, and we ended up predicting social security numbers, which in the United States are extremely sensitive information. Do you see where I'm going with this? So if you combine the two studies together, then the question becomes, can you start from a face? And using facial recognition, find a name and publicly available information about that name and the person. And from that publicly available information, infer non-publicly available information, much more sensitive ones, which you link back to the face. And the answer is yes, we can, and we did. Of course, the accuracy keeps getting worse. But in fact, we even decided to develop an iPhone app, which uses the phone internal camera to take a shot of a subject and then upload it to a cloud and then do what I just described to you in real time. Looking for a match, finding public information, trying to infer sensitive information, and then sending it back to the phone so that it is overlaid on the face of the subject. An example of augmented reality, probably a creepy example of augmented reality. In fact, we didn't develop the app to make it available, just as a proof of concept. In fact, take these technologies and push them to their logical extreme. Imagine a future in which strangers around you will look at you through their Google glasses or one day their contact lenses and use 7 or 8 data points about you to infer anything else which may be known about you. What will this future without secrets look like? And should we care? We may like to believe that the future with so much wealth of data will be a future with no more biases. But in fact, having so much information doesn't mean that we will make decisions which are more objective. In another experiment, we presented to our subjects information about a potential job candidate. We included in this information some references to some funny, absolutely legal, but perhaps slightly embarrassing information that the subject had posted online. Now, interestingly, among our subjects, some had posted comparable information, and some had not. Which group do you think was more likely to judge harshly our subject? Paradoxically, it was the group who had posted similar information, an example of moral dissonance. Now, you may be thinking, this does not apply to me because I have nothing to hide. But in fact, privacy is not about having something negative to hide. Imagine that you are the HR director of a certain organization and you receive resumes and you decide to find more information about the candidates. Therefore, you Google their names and in a certain universe you find this information. Or in a parallel universe, you find this information.
Do you see what the difference
Do you
is?
think that you would be
between the two?
equally likely to call
Maybe.
either candidate for an interview?
That seems like
If you think
harmless
so, then we are
information, doesn't
not like the US employers who are in fact part of our experiment. Meaning we did exactly that. We created Facebook profiles manipulating trades, and then we started sending out resumes to companies in the US. And we monitored whether they were searching for our candidates and whether they were reacting to the information they were finding on social media. And aware, discrimination was happening through social media for equally skilled candidates. Now, marketers like us to believe that all information about us will always be used in a manner which is in our favor. But think again, why should that be always the case? In a movie which came out a few years ago, Minority Report, a famous scene had Tom Cruise walk in a mall and holographic, personalized advertising would appear around him. Now, the movie is set in 2054, about 40 years from now. And as exciting as the technology looks, it already vastly underestimates the amount of information the organization can gather about you, and now they can use it to influence you in a way that you will not even detect. So, as an example, this is another experiment actually we are running, not yet completed. Imagine that an organization has access to your list of Facebook friends, and through some kind of algorithm, they can detect the 2 friends that you like the most. And then they create, in real time, a facial composite of these 2 friends. Now, studies prior to ours have shown that people don't recognize any longer, even themselves, in facial composites, but they react to those composites in a positive manner. So next time you are looking for a certain product and there is an ad suggesting you to buy it, it will not be just a standard spokesperson. It will be one of your friends. And you will not even know that this is happening. Now, the problem is that the current policy mechanisms we have to protect ourselves from the abusers of personal information are like bringing a knife to a gunfight. One of these mechanisms is transparency, telling people what you're going to do with their data. And in principle, that's a very good thing. It's necessary, but it is not sufficient. Transparency can be misdirected. You can tell people what you're going to do, and then you still nudge them to disclose arbitrary amounts of personal information. So in yet another experiment, this one with students, we asked them to provide information about their campus behavior, including pretty sensitive questions, such as this one. Now, to one group of subjects, we told them only other students will see your answers. To another group of subjects, we told them students and faculty will see your answers. Transparency, notification, and sure enough, this worked. In the sense, the first group of subjects were much more likely to disclose than the second. It makes sense, right? But then we added the misdirection. We repeated the experiment with the same group, this time adding a delay between the time we told subjects how we will use their data and the time we actually started answering the questions. How long a delay do you think we had to add in order to nullify the inhibitory effect of knowing that faculty will see your answers? 10 minutes? 5 minutes? 1 minute? How about 15 seconds? 15 seconds were sufficient to have the two groups disclose the same amount of information, as if the second group now no longer care for faculty reading their answers. Now, I have to admit that these talks so far may sound exceedingly gloomy, but that is not my point. In fact, I want to share with you the fact that there are alternatives. The way we are doing things now is not the only way they can be done, and certainly not the best way they can be done. When someone tells you people don't care about privacy, consider whether the game has been designed and rigged so that they cannot care about privacy. And coming to the realization that these manipulations occur is already halfway through the process of being able to protect yourself. When someone tells you that privacy is incompatible with the benefits of big data, consider that in the last 20 years, researchers have created technologies to allow virtually any electronic transactions to take place in a more privacy-preserving manner. We can browse the internet anonymously. We can send emails that can only be read by the intended recipient, not even the NSA. We can have even privacy-preserving data mining. In other words, we can have the benefits of big data while protecting privacy. Of course, these technologies imply a shifting of costs and revenues between data holders and data subjects, which is why perhaps you don't hear more about them. Which brings me back to the Garden of Eden. There is a second privacy interpretation of the story of the Garden of Eden, which doesn't have to do with the issue of Adam and Eve feeling naked and feeling ashamed. You can find echoes of this interpretation in John Milton's Paradise Lost. In the garden, Adam and Eve are materially content. They're happy, they're satisfied. However, they also lack knowledge and self-awareness. The moment they eat the aptly named fruit of knowledge, that's when they discover themselves. They become aware. They achieve autonomy. The price to pay, however, is leaving the garden. So privacy, in a way, is both the means and the price to pay for freedom. Again, marketers tell us that big data and social media are not just a paradise of profit for them, but a Garden of Eden for the rest of us. We get free content, we get to play Angry Birds, we get targeted ads. But in fact, in a few years, organizations will know so much about us that we'll be able to infer our desires before we even form them, and perhaps buy products on our behalf before we even know we need them. Now, there was one English author who anticipated this kind of future where we would trade away our autonomy and freedom for comfort. Even more so than George Orwell, the author is, of course, Aldous Huxley. In Brave New World, imagining a society where technologies that we created originally for freedom end up coercing us. However, in the book, he also offers us a way out of that society. Similar to the path that Adam and Eve had to follow to leave the garden. In the words of the savage, regaining autonomy and freedom is possible, although the price to pay is steep. So, I do believe that one of the defining fights of our times will be the fight for the control over personal information. The fight over whether big data will become a force for freedom rather than a force which will hiddenly manipulate us. Right now, many of us do not even know that the fight is going on, but it is, whether you like it or not. And at the risk of playing the serpent, I will tell you that the tools for the fights are here, the awareness of what is going on, and in your hands, just a few clicks away. Thank you.
So let me ask you, as marketers, what's one of the ways that you can tell that this video is a little bit dated? And this illustrates my point with regard to this topic. What's one way that you can tell that it's dated?
The way like
Well-
the iPhone pictures look.
Okay, the way the iPhone pictures look, maybe.
He was referencing things from 2009 to 2010.
Okay.
Beginning.
How about the use of Google Glass? What happened to Google? Google launched this thing that I thought was going to be really, really cool, and it turns out to be a marketing flop. How many of you saw something with Google Glass? They released them in a beta test to people, and you had to put on your name on a list to try and get one. And I thought they would be really, really cool, and it turns out they weren't really, really cool. People had very negative reactions to them when they saw somebody wearing them because they were afraid that they were being videoed and filmed, and that was maybe being put up online. However, is that a concern that we should really have? The average American is photographed over 200 times a day. Every single time you walk into a Walmart parking lot, every time you walk through Walmart, you're being recorded and videoed. When you go out here to Bronco Lake, we put camcorders up on the lake so we can make sure that people aren't jumping in and swimming. I don't know why anybody would want to jump into Bronco Lake. Now, in the past, one of the things that rule utilitarians can say is, well, we can come up with, we can ascertain these problems, and because they are problems that we can fix over long periods of time, we have time to correct for them. So we've corrected for things. One of the most remarkable corrections that has happened that you don't even hear about anymore is an environmental disaster called the hole in the ozone. What's happened to the hole in the ozone? You don't even hear about this. This was a big deal when I was graduating from high school in the 1990s because they were telling people basically that for people who had older cars, it was going to cost you some money to upgrade to a new what? What did they use in cars to air condition them in the 1980s and 1990s? What was the refrigerant? It was Freon. They now have a different refrigerant that's not a CFC, and so it doesn't pollute the atmosphere. And aerosol cans, we were releasing every time you'd spray your underarm deodorant that had that CFC in it. Now aerosol cans don't contain that, and as a result, the hole in the ozone has gotten much, much smaller. And so we've actually corrected for the problem. But in an age in which we have technology that advances so rapidly, can we account for, example, the effects that this will have? In going and looking on people's website pages, I don't think a lot of you would think that a kid is necessarily a negative thing that you would have to worry about your employer not hiring you. But consider a law office. How many hours are there in a work year? How many weeks are there in a year? There are 52. If we multiply 52 times what's the average work week? 40 hours, we come up with 2080. Most companies provide you with 2 weeks of vacation, so you subtract 80 hours from that, and you have 2,000 hours left over. Law firms like my brother's want you to bill 1,900 hours, which leaves you with a whopping what? 100 spare hours. In order to bill 1,900 hours in a work year, how many hours do you have to work in a work week? Because you cannot bill for every single second that you're at work. You have to work 80 hours a week on average to bill 1,900 hours. Double the work week. If law offices go to your Facebook page and they see that you are a mother, they are likely to put you on the mommy track. They don't say this, but that's what happens. Women who have children, before they make partner, are relegated to the mommy track in many instances. It's just an objective fact that has a disparate impact on, it's an objective test. We just say you have to bill 1,900 hours if you want to make partner. And this is the minimum. Most people who make partner bill far more than 1,900 hours. What does that mean? What does that have? What kind of effect does that have on our home and social lives? There isn't one. It means that you really don't have much of a life. One of my friends was going for partner in a law firm. She finally decided to get out and go to work for TU at a job that paid far less, because I said, well, you're off Christmas Day? She's like, yeah, I'm off Christmas Day, but you have to make up the hours. The law firm is closed Christmas Day, but you have to make up the hours at some point in time. How do we, in a world in which technology is so far advanced, how do we compensate? Well, duty ethicists would say that we can't worry about the results, because things like this have unforeseeable or unintended consequences beyond which we can even have the ability to produce rules. We've tried to produce rules, but a lot of times they just don't work. We have the Fair Pay Act, right? The Lilly Ledbetter Equal Pay Act. Women to this day still earn 73 cents on the dollar for what men earn for comparable jobs. And so we can't even legislate fast enough to deal with the issues that we're facing. So duty ethicists say what we have to do is we just have to ascertain the duties that we have to owe each other, and we can't worry about the results that follow. We have to ascertain moral duty a priori from the rational mind, and then apply those duties, and whether or not good results flow from the actions that occur is completely irrelevant. Now, duty ethics, just like utilitarianism, takes two forms. The oldest form, and what we talked about when we talked about the three questions that you can answer using philosophy, the question of knowledge, the question of conduct, and the question of governance, uses one of the forms that you can use. There are three ways you can answer these questions, right? You can use religion, you can use mythology, or you can use philosophy. And the oldest form is religious absolutism. Of course, one of the problems with religious absolutism is, well, I mean, it's nice, what are we going to do in terms of ascertaining what the moral duties are? We're going to go to the book. And there are people, there are politicians, we're running in an election that want to go to the book to answer this question. Let's go to the book. Well, whose book are we going to use? I really loved one of our congressmen from Oklahoma, forever and ever and ever, kept wanting to go to the book to answer this question. His name was Ernest Istook. He was the congressman from the 5th District. Anybody remember Congressman Istook? You all are probably too young to remember him. Anybody know what religion he was? This is the thing that I found just fascinating, that he wanted to go to the book for this answer. He was a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is also commonly in the vernacular called what? Mormon. Do you think we're going to go to your book, Ernie? Here in Oklahoma? I'm not thinking we're going to go to that book. What book are we going to go to in Oklahoma if we base this on popular denominations? We're going to go to some version of the Protestant Bible. Not the Catholic Bible, but some version of the Protestant. What's the dominant religion in Oklahoma? Southern Baptist is the plurality. There's no religion that has a majority in Oklahoma, but Southern Baptists have a plurality. What does that mean? What's the plurality? What's the difference between a plurality and a majority? A majority is defined as what in statistics? What's a majority? What?
Over half.
Which is what?
51%.
Not 51%. It's 50% plus 1, which could be what? If you have, for example, an election in which you have to reach not first past the post, but a majority vote in the election, what would be what would be the majority? Well, it could be a decimal, way, way out there. If you have large numbers of people, you know, the largest plurality would be 50%. 50% plus 1, you know, you could have 50.0000 somewhere out there. It's 50% plus 1 is the smallest majority. The largest plurality that you can have is 50%. We don't have any religion in Oklahoma that occupies quite 50%. It may be at some point in time that we actually have a majority of Oklahomans that say they're non-denominational, because those are the churches that are increasing in size the fastest. The life churches, which are non-denominational, New Church, Church on the Rock, why are those increasing faster than the traditional denominations, do you think? It's marketing. They are really good marketers. How many of you go to Life Church? 2 of you? Why do you go to Life Church?
Just more contemporary.
It's fun. There's a laser light show, there's a rock band, isn't there? Have lots of neat stuff. Happy message. You go to a Catholic church, how many of you are Roman Catholic? A few of you. What's a Catholic church like? I love traditional.
Terrible.
It's terrible? Why do you still go if it's terrible?
I mean, I haven't. My parents have always gone, but I haven't done that.
Oh, you're a recovering Catholic. Why'd you stop going?
It's just so boring. I don't know. I don't even understand what they're saying.
It's the same thing. You do the same. You stand up at the same
and
time.
sit down 5,000
You sit down at the
times.
same time. Everybody crosses
They sing
themselves
everything.
at the same time. There's something. People who like that. Why do you think they like that? Why do you think they love the Roman Catholic faith? What do you think it is that they like about it? For those people that still go, it's tradition. Yeah, I mean, you take. I've watched Catholics. I went just to observe. I asked some friends of mine that were Catholic, that were staunchly Roman Catholic, to go to Life Church out here one time. And I mean, you could just, they were just getting nervous. Like, you know, this is, whoa, that, you know, what's that? What's this laser light stuff? You know, they like the tradition. There's something nice about the tradition. But one of the problems with maybe relying on religious absolutism is that once we decide, let's say we can decide on whose book we're going to use. So we'll say in Oklahoma we'll use the New International Version, which seems to be the most popular among particularly the non-denominational churches. The Protestants have sort of a version. The oldest Protestant version of the book is what? Which version?
King James.
The King James Version. That's the one that the Anglican Church came up with. But now these new life churches and Church on the Rock and places like that use the New International. And what's the deal with the New International Version, the NIV Bible? Why is it that they like that?
It's easier to read.
It's written in plain English. Now, what may be the problem with writing it in plain English? Yeah, I think the interpretation could leave something. Of course, you know, the Pope and various Vatican councils has just thrown out portions of the Bible. You know, they just had a Vatican council and decided that we would eliminate. Let's see. Christianity evolved from Judaism. What's the Sabbath in Judaism? It's Friday night to Saturday night. Friday and Sunday to Saturday. Oh, can't have that. No. Got to be different. So we'll just change the Sabbath. There we go. The Seventh-day Adventists, by the way, went back to the what? They went back to the Jewish tradition. That's their Sabbath. It's on Saturday. So we're gonna have the New International Version. Well, how are we gonna enforce these laws? Let's look at Leviticus. What are some of the laws in Leviticus? It's an abomination to wear linen and wool together. That's an abomination. It's an abomination to plant two crops in the same field. It's an abomination to eat shrimp. How many of oh, wow. Anybody getting nervous yet? I'm gonna stone you. Yeah, the problem with religious absolutism is that, I mean, what, are we gonna use this text? Are we gonna cling literally to the, in Leviticus, it tells us that we should stone incorrigible children. Now, I might be foursquare in favor of that, but I'm probably in the minority since I don't like children. I didn't ever have any, never planned on having any, and I generally get very nervous when they're in the same room. Just start to, my niece and nephew are visiting, and I had to spend all day yesterday with them at the zoo, and by the time I got finished, I was just as nervous as, a prostitute in church. So, that's probably not what we're going to be able to do in terms of universal rules, because there are so many different books. Although we can find themes among all of the great monotheistic and even the non-monotheistic religions that we could say we could ascertain basic principles. In the 5th century, the 1st century AD or CE, that would be the Common Era or Anno Domini, depending on which one you like. The historians have gone to saying we'll have BCE, which stands before the Common Era, CE, which includes the Common Era. In the past, it was BC, which stood for before Christ, or Anno Domini, which meant in the year of our Lord. In the 1st century CE or AD, the great Rabbi Hillel was approached by a pagan who said he would convert to Judaism if the great man could teach him the whole of the Bible or the Torah while standing on one leg. Hillel replied to him, "That which is hateful unto yourself, do not unto your fellow man. That is the whole of the Torah. The rest is but commentary." This is a powerful form of exegesis, and you find echoes of it in almost every single major theistic religion. So I think we could maybe ascertain rules. But there's going to be problems with the execution of those things around the edges, whether or not we should eat shrimp, whether or not you should eat the cow. If you're in India, they're going to have prohibitions against eating the cow, whereas the Muslims and the Jews are going to have problems with eating pork and shellfish. So we have to come up with something else. It's called rational absolutism. Now, what does Kant say in the categorical imperative? So there are 3 great works that Kant has: the critique of pure reason, the critique of practical reason, and the metaphysics of morals. And they're all rather dry. I often think that for those of you who fall asleep, who think I'm not funny in my class and you go to sleep, I should force you to listen to me read the Metaphysics very, very slowly. It's a rather long, dry, boring, dull work by Kant, or perhaps the critique of pure reason. What we get in these is, Kant says there are 2 types of imperatives. There are hypothetical imperatives. Now marketers like this one, hypothetical imperatives. Hypothetical, and because large portions of consumer behavior are based upon what we might call rational actor theory, the hypothetical imperative appeals to you. What is the hypothetical imperative? Well, Kant says hypothetical imperatives exist because we want something, we pursue goals. This is classic economic rational actor behavior, the maximization of utility. So, what are your goals? What's a goal? What makes a good goal? What are your goals? We know that people who have goals and define them and set them out very clearly are more likely to succeed in life. You're more likely to achieve your goals if you actually plan, engage. And one of the things we talk about in marketing is strategic planning. So what's a goal? What's one of your goals?
Graduate.
Graduate. Is that a good goal?
I think so.
You think so, really?
To start.
You think, to start with, that's a good, I'm not sure that's a great goal to start with. What would make it, what makes a goal a good goal?
To get a good job with our degree.
Still, I'm thinking that maybe that's problematic. Get a good job. How do you define a good job? What's a good job?
Something you want
That
to do.
pays well, okay, well, I've got a problem there. What's pays well? I would be willing to bet that you all think that I have a pretty swell job. Pays pretty well. The average salary for a marketing faculty member is $160,000 a year. That's not what I make because UCO is cheap, and I remind them of this every single day, that I am underpaid. The average offer this year at AMA was $160,000, but I make over 6 figures here at the Harvard of the Hills, the Princeton of the Plains, the Berkeley of the Blackjacks, the Stanford of the Sticks, the Yale of the Yahoos, the Oxford of the Oaks.
I didn't think about
The Cambridge of the Catfish. Isn't that nice? That's a pretty good job. $100,000 sound good to you? Would you like that starting out? Does that sound nice? Is that a good job? Yeah?
We'll take it.
You take it? My brother's a tax attorney. He makes $500,000 a year. It's $100,000. Well, I don't know. He works all the time. He's one of these lawyers that puts in far more than 80 hours to make that every week. I don't think it's a great job. I'll stick with this job. You know, I make enough to be happy. When I was a younger man, I was going to be very rich. That was my thing. I was going to, go straight through, go to law school, and be a big building lawyer. And I did that. I went and I became a big building lawyer, a corporate attorney, made a lot of money, made far more money than I make now. And I was absolutely miserable every single day. It was absolute and complete and utter misery. So I decided to go back and get a PhD and do this instead, which is more fun. I get to sit here and talk about things that I want to talk about. But is that a good job? I think a lot of you would say, yeah, that's a good job. What's the average starting salary for marketers if you can get a job in the field? Well, if you get a job in our professional sales program, the average is about $100,000 a year starting out. That's the average that our students make when they graduate with a sales degree. If you get a job in just traditional marketing, you become a marketing communications person or a marketing analyst, the average is about $45,000 a year, so considerably less. So let's think about how we can make this goal better. We're not just going to say, I think graduating from college is a good, but you want any degree? That degree in underwater basket weaving? How about that? We have a degree program here called recreation. You can get a degree in recreation studies. I thought that would be a great degree. I can recreate. I thought that would just be a fantastic degree. Let's get a degree in recreation.
General studies is my favorite one.
General studies, yeah, what the hell do you do with that?
Well, the two of my friends are getting degrees in it.
Well, because it's easy, right? You just cherry pick. You can take things like,
History of rock and roll.
yeah, history of rock and roll, and art for aliens,
Yoga.
yoga. You can take advanced weightlifting.
Took a theory of coaching football was one of them.
Yeah, theory of coaching, things like that. Wow, well, so what makes a goal a better goal? Well,
Specific.
yeah, it's specific. I want to get a degree in, not just I want to graduate with a degree from UCO, I want to get a degree in what? I want to get a degree in marketing. I want to get a degree in professional sales. Okay, so now we've gotten more specific. I want to get this specific degree. What else?
Maybe win.
Measurable. Okay, so there has to be some temporal aspect to this. I want to get a degree in marketing within 3 years. Is that attainable? That's the third characteristic. It should be specific, measurable, and attainable. Is that an attainable goal?
Take 18 hours a semester, summer classes.
Yeah, you can do that.
current.
My mother graduated in 3 years. She thought I was a slacker because I graduated in 4 years. with my bachelor's degree, she just thought that was horrible. What took you so long? Slacker. I didn't want to die, didn't want to pull my hair out. How many of you can realistically achieve the goal of graduating in 3 years? How many of you work? Almost everybody. Does that impact your ability to get your degree in 3 years? So maybe 4 years, 5. I mean, those are good goals, right? So hypothetical imperatives exist because we want something and we should pursue these goals. And they may or may not have moral import to them. Generally speaking, is there any moral import to getting a degree? There's not a lot of moral import. I guess you could say that maybe there is some amount of moral import, and that maybe not getting a degree is got some moral import, because what are you likely to experience if you don't have a degree? Well, you experience higher rates of poverty if you don't have a degree. So maybe there is some moral import. But generally speaking, hypothetical imperatives exist because we want something. If you want to get a better job, or if you want to have the chance at getting a better job, well, then you should go to college and get a degree. And you should get a degree in something other than general studies, because that's going to be the pathway to career success, or at least the shot at career success. Categorical imperatives, on the other hand, exist independent of wants. They exist because we have some duty. How do we ascertain the duties? What is it we can know? My camcorder's about to go dead, and since this is a critical part, I will stop there since I'm running out of time, and we will finish this